You are now tuned into the Real Rap Radio Show with your host, Walil Archer on Downtown Hot Radio. I have my special guest, Michael D. Scotland. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Never better, never better. So honored to have you as a author today on the show. So let's jump right into it. Tell us about your book. What is the title of your book,
Trying for 55 years.
and how did you come up with that title?
Well, that's how long I was in practice as a lawyer. I was admitted in 1965 and I quit 55 years later. I wrote the book over a span of about 30 years. And it was sort of like I kept track of the cases that I was doing, at least I thought the interesting ones. And I would write a little something about it, and then I put it together into a book, which took me several years to prepare the book. And now we decided we're going to try to market it.
And when you came up with the concept of the book, what did you want the readers to take away from reading the book?
It was to stimulate an interest in what I did in the various cases. The cases are all different. Uh, they there's criminal cases in there, there's administrative law cases in there, there's civil cases, there's medical malpractice cases, there's racing law cases. Racing law is an extremely narrow practice of law, but I had a whole bunch of them. I was probably the busiest racing lawyer in New Jersey because I handled both thoroughbred cases and harness racing cases.
I
And
mean, I'm sorry, continue.
it's all right. It's
And how many chapters do you have in your book?
I don't have it divided into books. I think there's about 120 cases in here, and it's divided into three periods of time: 1965 through 1980, 1980 through 2000, and 2000 through the time I retired.
Now, what are the top three cases that's more meaningful for you?
That's a good question because it changes. I've changed my opinion several times since I wrote the book. So one of them involved Judge Thomas Yacarino, who was a sitting Supreme Court judge or Superior Court judge. He was removed by the Supreme Court for misconduct, and then they took his law license away from him on top of it. So there were two Supreme Court opinions in this book that dealt with that. That was a very, very interesting case. You could write a book about it literally, and I sort of did. You know what I mean? It's two full Supreme Court cases that were created by this. So that's one of the three. The second three is probably it's a host liability case. It was a famous case. I was on television with it. It's got to do with if you go to somebody's house and you drink, and the host is there, the homeowner, and he feeds you the alcohol, and then you get yourself drunk, you go on the road and you have an accident, the homeowner can be sued and found liable for causing the drunkenness. So that's New Jersey Supreme Court in 1984. That's the second case that I would call as my popular cases or interesting cases. The third case, I think it's one of the two malpractice cases at the end of the book. The last two cases in the book are both medical malpractice cases. They both settled for a substantial amount of money. I think that probably the most interesting one is the one where the baby was born with essentially half a brain and had to live its life out, which lasted 7 years. And we then started a lawsuit against the doctor. And the case is an unbelievable case in terms of what we had to put in it to succeed with it, which we did. And those are the three cases that I would choose as the most interesting ones.
Okay. Now, when writing the book, did you receive writer's block at any point?
I didn't hear you. What was that?
While you was writing the book, did you experience writer's block?
What is that?
Writer's block is when your brain just goes blank and it may take you a day or two to come back and finish writing.
I don't think that ever happened to me because you know what? I live the cases, you know, so it's indelibly, you know, in your brain. I don't think I had writer's block at all.
Okay. Now, what advice would you give to an inspiring author that want to write a book?
Well, this is an extremely unusual book because it's like you asked me about chapters. In other words, it's one different case after the next, and they're really all different. And so it's not a repetitive type thing that I'm doing it. So it's individual. Writing a book like this is, I'm sure there are other lawyers who do things like I did, and it's a matter of putting your head to it if you want to, if you live it. In other words, I like to think that I literally live this book. That's why it's kind of easy for me to talk about it. It's it's a major piece of my life, and all I'm doing is telling a story of what I did with my life, the time of my life, literally the time of my life, and that's
Fi-
what it is.
55 years, huh?
That's right, and it came just to that.
Out of your 55 years, what would you say was the most exciting or rewarding time of the 55 years?
Well, that's a very, very tough question. It really is because each one of these cases I could defend as being the most interesting. And that's a lot of cases that you have to argue about. And I had about 10 cases that went to the Supreme Court of New Jersey. Uh, most of those 10 came out with good results for me and my clients. And um, those are probably the most interesting because what you're doing is you're changing the substantive law of the state on a particular set of circumstances and facts. And you're having a chance to affect history in the state. So I guess those are that group of cases. It'd be very hard to select one of those. The host liability one caused the biggest stir because I thought they accused me of being the gripe who killed their parties. In other words, I was alerting people that when they go to somebody's house to drink, they better be careful and better not drink too much, or they can get themselves in trouble at the other end of the night. And that's a problem. I had one case which created the liability for when you go into a shopping mall and you park the car in a parking lot, and if you were accosted, and I had a couple of clients who were actually murdered as a result of being picked up in the parking lot by somebody who wanted their car, put them in the car, drove them away, killed them, and took their car. Happened a couple of times in the book, in cases. And the law was, when I first got the case, the law was there was no liability on the part of the owner of the parking lot unless you could show that they had been ignoring several repetitions of the same issue. In other words, if you had somebody go in the property or on the property before and was accosted and they didn't do anything about it, like have security guards or somebody in a car driving around, or did anything, you couldn't be held liable unless you had that. The case that I had, it's Clossie is the name of the case. It's in my book. Was they changed the law and they said that was only one of other points that could be brought out to justify liability on the part of the owner. So that case made it in affected the United States as a whole. Every parking lot in the United States probably has security now, either some form of security. And depending upon the location and size and things like that, you get appropriate security. That's because of my case. So that's kind of interesting that you can have that kind of an impact just in a mundane personal injury practice. And there it is. So that's that. That's the third case.
So true. And where can they find your book on social media? I mean, where
Oh,
can they find your book online? Sorry about that.
I'm not on social media that I know of, you know.
I mean, where can they find your book at online?
It's on what do you call it?
Barnes and
Amazon.
Nobles, Amazon. Okay.
And I think there's another one, but I don't know any of that stuff. I really don't. I never paid much attention to it. My wife does the Amazon work in my house, so I don't pay much attention to that. But that's where you can get it. And you, if you go to a regular bookstore, you can get it. Some of them they wouldn't have it populating the bookstore, but they'll order it for you, and
Okay.
they'll get it.
Okay. That's good to know. And any final thoughts or closing remarks?
No, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed being a lawyer. I enjoyed writing the book. I enjoyed reading the book, and I like to talk about it. What more can I say?
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you for doing the interview today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So that's my time today on the Real Rap Radio Show with your host, Walil Archer on Downtown Hot Radio. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Take it.